This is the Raising Rebellion podcast, episode number 18.
Welcome to the Raising Rebellion Parenting Podcast, where we will explore how to help kids seek purpose and passion, challenge society's expectations, and avoid a standardized life. Now here's your host, Paul H.K.
Hello, Rebels. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we continue with the special trilogy edition of Raising Rebellion, Rebel Generations. In today's part 2, I talked to Jan Black. Jan grew up in a home with very strict rules, and while her parents did care for her, her home was tumultuous. She talks about how she took refuge in music and art and had to make use of the small spaces where she could be free. She did not finish college. However, interestingly though, she did become a teacher. She wrote textbooks and even character curriculum. She loved expressing herself artistically and helping others, and as a result, many opportunities came her way. Her mentality towards trying new things was and is very simply, sure, I'll do that. How hard could that be? Today, she continues to be a creator, marketer, and builder, and has new projects popping up all the time. From her journey of a tough childhood, finding herself, becoming a mom and grandmom, and being an entrepreneur, Jan's insight and wisdom inspires me to no end. Here now is Rebel Generations Part 2, my interview with Jan Black.
Okay, today I'm joined by author, creator, builder, and entrepreneur Jan Black. Jan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Oh, you're welcome. I have so looked forward to it, Paul.
Oh, me too. I'm very much looking forward to it. Okay, if we could, let's start at the very beginning. That's where I usually like to start, if you don't mind. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, your life growing up, and a bit about your journey to where you are today?
Sure. I was born to two very young parents, only child. They were from extremely poor families, and they both had great drive to rise out of that. My dad was a 19-year-old soldier in the Army, the Air Force. And mom was a 17-year-old woman who, together, they did their best. It turned out that it didn't always work out so well. I mean, they were kind of like water and oil, and so the home was a little scary at times, often. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I knew that they both loved me in the best way that they could. Mm-hmm. And so I took my refuge and safety was in music and art and creating. And I remember at 4, we lived in an apartment house, and I rallied all the kids together and wrote and directed a play. I remember standing in the back of the room in the apartment, just flooded with this excitement and exuberance over seeing the kids take a bow and the parents clapping, and that whole audience connection, and the kids got to express, and I just felt completely satisfying. I've never ever forgotten that. And so Dad was a very functional alcoholic and a sex addict. So he would disappear for periods of time and run off with someone and then come back. And I got the brunt of some of that myself. So at the same time, they really worked hard to create a life that had richness to it and experiences. And in spite of all that, they did become middle-class folk. And so I loved school. I went to public school, and then at the age of 15, I always looked older for my age, and my now husband Lou was a college freshman, and I was a high school sophomore, and we started dating. And so at 15, that's where my life took a turn of that relationship. And also I think it's important to say that I was raised to be compliant. And I compliantly became compliant. I was in a religious environment that was very strict Baptist, and men were the king, and women were to be quiet. And then at home, of course, it was a similar compliance for my own safety. And so what I learned to do was make the most of the small space where I could be free. And I think that was a gift. I think that has caused me to be a person who maybe the pasture is small sometimes, but man, there's a lot of things you can do in that small space. And so I grew up compliant and married compliant. I'm not saying I didn't love my husband. That's not true at all. And so we married young. I married at 18 and made the choice to not go to college, which I felt was the right choice because that's what women did. And worked while Lou completed his education and got his master's. And then a couple of years later, started having my own kids, which became the absolute thrill of my life. The chance to create with them and to perhaps be able to do what I could to let them be free and themselves. And I remember in first, second grade analyzing my teachers, which ones seemed suited to this job. And there was one in particular who just screamed a lot. And I remember just thinking, understanding that, she's just in her wrong role. And I felt the same about my parents. I had this early understanding that people really usually do the best they can in the circumstances, and there's some other force at play that's keeping them from their capacity. And so I became quite interested in life about the mystery of being who you are. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And how can you do that within the confinements of health or lifestyle and that sort of thing? And so I'm not surprised that my work became really all about that. And that everything I create in my career has been in one way or another creating what makes it easier to be who you are and build what excites you.
Boy, oh boy, that's quite a bit of story in such a short amount of time there. So many questions to ask you. Let me just start with the that whole realization of sort of digging into that mystery of being who you are. It's such an important question. I feel like it's a question that, probably transcends generations of people who never really are able to articulate that, yet it's something that I think we're all kind of in search of in one way or another in different levels of awareness, right? Where do you think, how do you think you came to come to that realization and to explore that particular topic? Where do you think that came from?
I can't explain that. I think we come with gifts, and I think that was unknowing. And my core brilliance, I over the years, I created a process that I call core brilliance. And so my first question was, well, Jan, what's your core brilliance? And it's, by core brilliance, I mean, what is it that is, if you go down to bare root, what is that thing you bring to the table? What is that contribution you make, regardless of your stage of life, regardless of your job? What is that? And my core brilliance I realized, was to see and articulate the truth of something. And it's that seeing that then produces the ability, because I see us all having this core brilliance and then a toolbox that, please stop me if I'm going on some tangent that isn't relevant, but
No, by all means, please go ahead.
But I see the core brilliance. So my ability to see and articulate the truth of something, that came for me. We all have a toolbox then that I think of talents and personality and experiences and knowings that come with that, so that we can bring that to the world. And there's where the differences are, because in my toolbox, my articulation toolbox, I have the fun of being able to articulate the truth of something, not only as a writer, but as a songwriter and poet and artist and designer, speaker. I have a really fun toolbox. So I have lots of choices of how will I articulate this idea or this person. And so I believe all of us have that. And I ended up, without really realizing it, knowing how to do that with someone, and spent the last 17 years doing that for people. And I can't explain how I knew. I just know that maybe my circumstance of the desperate situation that was confining and tried to squeeze that out of me. Caused me to, and that probably, I see that as a gift, because it caused that brilliance to come forward in a form that has lasted a lifetime and that I've developed over time.
Yeah. I am a big believer in that we are all products of our upbringing in some way. And, I almost think that to go through some sort of hardship, and I think we all have it, right, at different degrees, but I think we all have some sort of hardship, in our childhood. To be able to take that and sort of use it in a positive way, to spin it in a positive way. I mean, you're a great example of it. You were brought up to be very compliant with very strict boundaries and rules, and you felt something inside of you that needed to be expressed, and you found a way to do it within, the small confines that you had. And in a way that was almost a good thing, that you were so confined, you were almost forced to find that for yourself and to express it for yourself and to figure out the ways in order to do it. Do you think that sounds about right?
I think that's totally true, yes. And I would also add that, it becomes easy for us to compare our lives to someone else. I could easily say, oh, my life wasn't nearly as stressful as so many others. Yeah. But what I've come to understand is our sensitivity, that not only is that unproductive, but our sensitivities are different. I mean, I'm a writer and a creator. I am very sensitive. And so things affect us differently depending on that. And, people often say, in fact, I had just this really rich conversation. I see all of you, by the way, as what I call the darlings of what can be. And I am completely in love with all of you and devoted to your being who you are and building what excites you. And so I have these rich conversations with people in their 30s and 40s that just fill me up. And we had one at Good Life Project Camp this summer back in New York, upstate. And someone said that we were recalling different things from childhood, and she told a story, and she goes, so is that any wonder that I grew up to be an event planner? And I said, and an organizer, because in her home things were just in disarray a lot. And I said, it's possible that that's how it is, but it's also possible that circumstance awakened in you the brilliance that was already there.
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying, is that the gift of these challenges actually gives opportunity for the brilliance to jump forth.
Yeah, I agree. So fascinating. Okay, let me ask you. Jody mentioned that at one point you were an educator. Is that right? Were you a teacher?
Yes, and talk about a rebel situation, because I did not go to school. I did not go to college.
Wow, yeah.
And yet I always loved education. And so for me, I mean, I cry at high school and college commencements so easily. I'm not an easy crier, but I cry at those things. And I think it's because I just value education so much. And yet I did not go to college, even though I've been certainly a learner my whole life. Mm-hmm. But when the kids were young and we were still in that Baptist environment, which, by the way, I'm not anymore, mm-hmm. So the kids were like 6 and 5 and 4. I had 3 kids pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And anyway, they saw me as one of those creative moms, and they said, hey, we need a 4-year-old kindergarten teacher. Would you do that? And I said, sure. How hard can that be? Which has usually been my answer to things like that, where I have no business treading. How hard can that be? And so I became this excited 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, and it really worked out well. And so then they graduated me to 5-year-old kindergarten, because in those days in a Christian school you did not need to have certification. You did not need to have a degree, particularly in kindergarten, because their attitude was, hey, these are just children, they don't need professionals, which astounds me. But anyway, and in 5-year-old kindergarten I realized that the grades had this character development curriculum that they did every month. They chose a character trait and focused on that. But the kindergarten didn't have it, and I thought, well, come on, these kids need it too. So I had a terrific supervisor named Pat, and I said, hey, Pat, what if we create this for kindergarten? And so we created Kindergarten One and started giving workshops at big educational events. And the workshops, I mean, I was in my element. I got to just create my brains out. And I was so passionate about the need for kids to have teachers that are engaged. And so it just, all that was my opportunity to find out that I was an educator, and how important it was for me that kids are treated well and educated well. And so the workshops always got the biggest rooms, because people were loving how nuts we went with the training that we did. And so it was always standing room only, people in the hall. And so a publisher saw that and approached me and said, Jan, would you write a K through 6 character curriculum for us? And each grade would have a book for the children and then a teacher's guide. And of course, what was my answer? Sure, I'll do that. And I'd never written anything other than little poems or stories for my own sake. And so I took 2 years and wrote this K through 6 curriculum, and it was such a blast. And I took a new approach, a rebel approach, in a sense that it hadn't ever been done that way before. These were the days before character was a big deal. And instead of showing a different Bible character for each character trait, I thought, what if a class actually stuck with a character like Moses the whole year and got to view Moses from all those character perspectives? And so we did it. And then in the kindergarten, before I accepted that big job, I had said, well, these character traits for kindergarten, they need music. How hard can it be to write a song? And so I ended up publishing like 50 kids' songs around these character traits, and did the illustrations. So that for me was a seedbed of saying, oh my gosh, I'm an educator. Oh my gosh, I love to speak and teach. oh my gosh, I can write curriculum in a way that's very sequential. And then much of the fun was creating these teachers' books that I wanted them to keep being re-inspired each year. And so I would add depth to them in a way that kept their interest. And those buggers sold for, well, they're still selling them.
Oh my gosh.
And this was in 85.
Wow.
And so and they were translated in 3 or 4 languages, and
Holy
I
moly.
think we're up to nearly 1 million copies sold around the world. So
Wow.
And the music. So that was my first that was my education, wasn't it?
Hands-on education.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kids grew, and I loved being a mom. I was a mom whose dinner table was often filled with finger paints, and we just it mattered to me so much that the kids grew up expressing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I don't mean expressing themselves creatively. I wasn't such a good mom because I was in that environment of be careful. You don't get to show anger. You don't get to, anyway. And I hadn't had siblings. So that part was kind of baffling to me, like, oh my gosh, because I had been an only child. So anyway, Lou, fortunately, my husband had 3 brothers. And so he was pretty good at saying, just normal. It's normal. But anyway, time went on, and each of the kids has turned out to be just remarkably different than the other, and expressing who they are in ways that just astound me and thrill me, and I learn from them all the time.
That's awesome. I'm seeing some common denominators here with you and Jody and Riley, for that matter. How hard, let's try that. And what if, the what ifs, that's a big question, I know, for Jody and Riley. So now I'm seeing where all this is coming from.
Yeah, that what if is definitely their little formula, but the lifestyle of sure, why not try it? I think, at least in some parts of their upbringing, definitely that was the spirit of the home.
I love it. Okay, well, since we're talking about home, since we're talking about you being a parent, let's talk about Jody for a little bit, if we could.
I love it.
She tells me that she was different than her siblings in that she always leaned towards taking a more non-traditional path. Is that right? Is that pretty different than her older siblings?
Yeah, I would say that it isn't that they didn't take steps and make moves that were always traditional. But Jody has, we always called it an impishness about her that caused her to take actions that, and she has a strong sense of justice.
Yeah.
And so when there's injustice, she was the one that if a teacher disrespected a student, she could not bear it. And Riley totally picked up on that. Riley has the same thing. If a teacher doesn't respect a student, you're going to hear about it. And so she had this sense of injustice that caused her to become known as a rebel because she wouldn't tolerate it, and she wasn't afraid to voice it. That's where she was different.
Gotcha. Interesting that we classify something like that as being a rebel. You know what I mean? Why is that rebel necessarily? Just because it's nobody else is going to...
environment.
Right.
In the environment of a Christian school, that
I guess so.
is rebellious.
Right. Everybody else is compliant and sitting there and quiet and hands folded and Jody speaking up. I totally get that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I love that. Okay, so to continue with that story, she told me that that was that was the cause as to why right before her senior year in high school, she went to you and Lou and said, I want to change schools. I want to get away from this school. I'm seeing, too much injustice that I just can't accept, and I want to go to a public school. Is that right?
That's right.
and what was your boy? And what was your reaction? How did what were you thinking when she came to you and told you that a few days before entering her senior year?
Yeah. Well, I knew she was not happy at the school that she was at. I did not expect her to ask for that. And the thing is, when things like that happen and you are wrestling with your own voice, because at every age we wrestle with that. And so, yes, I'm a parent, but when your child wants to buck the norm, then you immediately, I remember saying to myself, are you going to care more about what people think or more about your daughter? And fortunately, I quickly understood that she had priority.
I love it.
Over anybody else's opinion. And that isn't, I was surprised at myself and proud of myself because, that isn't always, I'm not always that good at saying, I don't care what you think.
Sure.
So we supported her entirely, and it was a great move for her. I was really proud of her, and she taught me, right? Jody teaches me all the time by her behavior.
Yeah.
And helps me grow by watching her.
I think that's so great. I think that's so true, and one that I really try to keep in my own perspective is that, we're parents, but it doesn't mean that, we're parents by having achieved some sort of level of education and practice and experience, so that we know exactly what to do all the time. And it does need to be a two-way street, I think. I think that really lends itself to being a more fulfilled, giving, communicative family that's stronger,
Absolutely.
when it is that two-way street. And you can totally see that in Jody and Riley's relationship. It's so fantastic. And I'm seeing it all,
it is.
Through all you guys. It's really awesome how your family defines family. It's I'm kind of calling it a next gen, and I love that Jody's putting out that book that she's writing. That's going to be talking about that too. It's so great, so so awesome.
Yeah, they model such an equality, and they're the model of a strengths-based family. Who is there for each other and devoted, and not just devoted inwardly, but outwardly to the world. And and so my relationship with both of them, and Allie and John too, is one that obviously I treasure. Yeah,
you're in there too, Jan. It's not just them. You're in there too. So. It's great to see. In fact, when I met you guys, it was you and Jody, right? And one of the things I mentioned to Jody that was so great. One of the first impressions I had was she handed me her business card that had her whole family on the card, and I'm like, who does this? This is so awesome. Who puts their whole family on their business card? So great. So yeah, the first impression was such a strong one with you and Jody. It's really fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about Riley a little bit. Boy, his energy is through the roof. Love his curiosity, his adventure spirit, his love to connect and to create, and now that having talked to Jody and yourself a little bit more, it's obvious now where that comes from. He just comes from that environment, and he thrives, I think, so much because of that environment that you guys provide and the support system. When he told me about he made the decision that college wasn't for him either. When you heard that, what were your thoughts?
I was tired of his struggle. I was tired for him of the struggle that he had in high school. I was tired of his talent being misunderstood. Maybe they told you about his great writing ability, that because he was such a social guy in class, the English teachers, every one of them, determined that this kid has nothing more than social, and he would write amazing papers, and they would accuse him of plagiarizing. And
they did not tell me that story, by the way.
Yeah, and so I don't mean that it was like every week they accused him. They just wrote him off
right.
as a guy that couldn't possibly have writing talent. And yet at the end of his senior year, when they took their essays, his essay scored the highest in the entire class, meaning all the seniors. So, and I think maybe was one of the highest scores ever given. So that kind of treatment, I didn't want him to have it anymore. And by then, Riley, I realized, knew himself better than I know myself and that most people know themselves. And I had developed a trust in him early on that told me this kid knows. And I can support what he decides. And even if it turns out to be a direction that doesn't work out, he's going to course correct and figure it out.
Yeah.
So I was fine with it.
Fantastic. Now, I believe you and Riley have actually worked together a little bit. Is that right?
We have.
Tell me about that.
Well, when he was 10 and we were sitting at dinner with Lou and his brother, and his brother said to Riley, so we're sitting in this booth in a restaurant, and Steve says to Riley, "You really love your Grandma Jan, don't you?" And he said, "Yep, I'm the candle and she's my little spark." And
that's so great.
So that came out of nowhere, and that has stuck. So he still calls me Spark, and I call him Candle. There are different times we do that. And that has been our relationship. He is a light, and I tend to be able to spark him, but really we spark each other. And so it's a very fruitful, productive relationship. We love to, he's a Renaissance guy, so he loves philosophy and sacred geometry. And if you see his notebook, I hope you get to see his notebook sometime. It's just amazing because he gets on these learning tangents, whether it's the solar system or, he's a didactic learner. He teaches himself and he gets fascinated and he goes deep. And then he puts it in this notebook and then he can't quit talking about it. He just loves it. So those are the kinds of conversations we have. So I remember when he was in high school, he was selling popcorn, and so I named it. Part of my work became not only defining the core brilliance of people, but branding, because that's just what a brand is. It's an authentic expression of the authentic person. And so I remember naming his company for him, RT for Riley Temple, Good Stuff, and he was wanting to sell stuff, and so that was his first little company. And anyway, so we've always been up to something. And then last year he needed some cash, and so we created this consultation that we would meet with people for 30 minutes or an hour, and a millennial and a seasoned brander would help people come to solutions on whatever they were interested in about their business or brand. And then as he's been figuring himself out, and what will the book be, and that evolved as I'm sure he told you, where friends were asking him questions about backpacking around the world, and he kept writing the answers out and said, wow, what if there's a book? And of course, I'm all over books. I've written and edited books all my career. Mm-hmm. And so I got to be helpful with him in that, although he wrote every word, and I did edit, but he wrote and designed meticulously that book. So we got to see that part of him that he had never seen in himself before, and helped name his company, and anyway, it's been that kind of a we build off one another's energy and knowledge, and we don't go very long without one of our talks that center us both and make the world right again.
So amazing. My gosh. I don't think I've ever heard a story like this of this 3 generations being so tight and open with each other, and being working with each other and supporting each other like this. It's really refreshing, fantastic to hear and to talk to you guys. I mean, it's just incredible. It's really fantastic, the example that you guys are for others and myself.
Paul, thank you. And Paul, this is a tribute to Jody, in my opinion, because she is. The relationship that Riley and I have would be there anyway. But look at how generous Jody is to not be threatened by it, and to encourage it, and to even invite me at times to talk to Riley, and for her to ask for my counsel sometimes. And that is, she is a star, and I just look at that and marvel at her confidence in her own role, so that there's plenty of room for others to input into the lives of her children.
Yeah, it is really great. Okay, let's talk a little bit about their 9-month excursion around the world. When Jody told you that they were going to sell everything, first of all, did you know that this was kind of in the plan, and not in the plans, but had been talked about here and there? And
yes, I did.
Okay. So you're aware. So it wasn't a total surprise.
No.
Okay. So she tells you that, okay, it's happening. We're selling everything. We're going to go travel around the world for 9 months and make it happen. What was your reaction?
Applause.
Right.
I mean, how can you not applaud?
Yeah.
Such a crazy, brave adventure.
Yeah.
And was I concerned? Will they be safe? Yeah, every day.
Right.
Was I a worrywart? No. But, I was well aware. But, you just can't hold your kids back on stuff like that. I mean, we're all gonna face our trials. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna get hurt now and then, perhaps. But man, if that happened to them, they'd be doing something extraordinary that they dreamed about. And so I decided to just trust.
Yeah.
And I had seen them manage such hurdles before with Allison's. Not only her adoption, but then her
health issues,
her health issues, and And I've watched Jody advocate. I mean, it's a whole other story about advocating for your child. As I watched Jody do that, I knew this family was capable of whatever they set their mind to.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing to see the world. And Jody had held that vision in her heart for so long, and to think they actually could do it, I was blown away by their decision to do it.
Yeah.
It was magnificent, the whole way they treated it. And Jody has this calming force around her.
Mm-hmm.
And so even as the excitement is there, she has this, her brilliance is in equipping, and so she's an equipper, and in her toolbox of talents is this ability to be calm when things are chaotic and to see a clear step by step of what needs to be done. And so she just does that over and over in whatever she does.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was cool.
So great. Now, after they went on their trip and they came back, what changes in them did you notice? Did you see any, like right off the bat kind of thing, or maybe a little bit over time?
Yep. We would talk often by Skype, and so it was, so we were in touch, and I could see in them, all of them, a relaxing. Now they weren't uptight people, but let's see what. They were relaxing into themselves as people and a unit, and you could see them. Jody and I talked about this, about how the trip has expanded them and yet brought them closer together. Mm-hmm. So even as they were being brought closer together, they each were being expanded, and you could see them relax into that relationship, and it was profound. And then we met up with them for 6 weeks in Europe. That was our first trip to Europe. And so again, Jody was being a portal to experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so we got to see it firsthand, how they had kind of gone into this rhythm and how nothing ruffled them, and how they just kept one step in front of the other, and the stories they told, and the love they had for each other, and the honesty, how they figured out when they're sleeping in a 10 by 10 room for 4 nights, all in the same room, how they, had these signals, that halt system where you stop a person, you say, wait a minute, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you, I can't remember the yell, anyway, tired? And so how they incorporated a system, and this is all part of Jody being an equipper. She knows how to systemize, and so they had this system. It was a beautiful thing. And then when they came home, all that was refined, and I think the thing that I saw in them when they came home, besides all of what I've just described, was a longing, a disorientation, and a longing for what they had just left.
Sure.
I mean, coming back after that, and figuring out who are we now in this place? And so they made that decision to move into the condo rather than their home, just to keep them on the edge of still being in something different, in a different place. So wise.
Yeah. Incredible experience. And then, even the experience of now coming back, you, like you said, now what do we do? What are we, how do we exist now in this world? How do we take that experience that we just had and apply it to our lives at this point? I think is an experience in and of itself as well.
Yeah, and that is when you said earlier that we're always trying to figure out who we are. It's because everything is always changing. Who will I be now?
Yeah.
Who am I now? And let's say a person gets ill. Who will I be as a person whose health is bad? Who will I be as a grandmother? Who will I be as an aging person? Who will I be as one who's come back from a 9-month experience? We have to figure that out, and thinking ahead to is always good. But still, it's discovery.
Right. Absolutely. Well, speaking of discovery, let's talk a little bit about your work. Maybe tell me a little bit about the different kinds of work that you've done that have kind of culminated to what you're doing now. I know you have the Black brand, Ludicuse as well. And I know they all have kind of a common theme and the types of questions and the approach that you take to all the different things that you do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The Be Who You Are and Build What Excites You, I not only create processes and products that make that easier, but I also create things that bring clarity to what's blocking us from that. Mm-hmm. And so my first project after the character curriculum actually was a book it was another case of I had no business in this field, but it was a case, I had an opportunity to write a book for women in domestic violence. I had heard that when a victim came to a shelter, they were given a single page of how to get safe, but no one was empowering them to suggest that there are other things they could do to that they can't. It isn't their choice to be abused. Once they're abused, it became evident to me that they didn't think they had a choice to leave it. And so I saw that gap and pulled together a therapist and some other folk, but mainly the therapist and I. So I instigated that, and we created a book and curriculum that has been very helpful over the years. And then out of that, a publisher asked us, they liked what we wrote about boundaries, and so we wrote a book called Better Boundaries. And then Jody and I created this incredible financial education because she was a financial planner at the time, and I was just getting into branding. And so we had an opportunity. She was hired by the state treasurer to create a financial education, which was a brand new idea for women. And he was hoping for 250 women, and through our marketing and developing it, 2,500 women, actually 2,600, I think, in Oregon came, and we created satellite locations. And so we seized that opportunity and thought, how wonderful would it be to bring financial education to women in our nation? And so we did that in 11 major cities, and we're attracting 1,500 women at a time, and hired people like Debbie Reynolds. This is a sad week for us because we grew to love her so much.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the financial education project was terrific. Ended badly because though we had raised $4 million to pay for these things, it was sponsorship money and state treasurer money, and that just didn't all work out. Mm-hmm. So when the .com crash happened, we had to close that. Mm-hmm. But then I wondered, what in the world will I do now? Well, we had met some amazing women and men through that project, and one of them was assistant director of the GSA in the federal government, General Services, and she was Clinton appointed and wondering what she was going to do next. And I said to her, well, I've got this process that I sometimes use with people to help them make those decisions. And so she said, well, do it with me. So I did. This was early days of Core Brilliance, and she loved it. And within a month, I thought I was just going to go into some black abyss of what am I going to do now? And within a very short time, I had a dozen clients in D.C. and New York based on her referral. And so I became that. I became one who defined the core brilliance of people, and then gradually turned those into brands and businesses and books. And then along the way, I'm a project lover, so I created Ludicuse, because unspoken ludicrous questions, that's where Ludicuse come from, is something that keeps us. Those unspoken ludicrous questions are behind whatever has us mad, sad, or feeling had. and they stop us from being ourselves and building what excites us. So the idea came to me while I was writing something for some at-risk moms, and they just took on a life of their own. And so ludicrous questions like, may I control you? May we have a lopsided relationship in my favor? Will you pretend with me that I care? These things that are asked all the time but unspoken. Mm-hmm. And so ludicrous help us decode the unspoken ludicrous questions in life. And so those have been the ludicrous questions I asked ludicrous was, may I invent you in 2007 and market you in 2016? And so they've been sitting and waiting their turn. I've been using them in various ways just to test them and see, because they work in any setting, on any subject. In fact, the education set, I think you're going to love, because it's a set of ludicrous questions education asks us. And I'm an advisor. I'm on the, I'm a trustee for Wayfinding Academy up here in Portland, which is, I'm sure you're aware of it.
Yeah. No.
And so one of the ideas that we're talking about is to create a set of ludicrous for wayfinding.
Oh my gosh, that's a fantastic idea. Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
I will definitely have you in that, because it's right up your alley. So
oh my gosh,
anyway, that's ludicrous, and then I have a book I'm writing called Let Yourself Happen, which is 25 ways to cooperate with your own unfolding. And then I've also started, lots of projects going through the Black brand. And then I have just recently formed a company, was invited to partner with two fantastic guys who asked me to join them to create these ClickFunnels webinars done for you, because I am so tired of the DIY entrepreneur hell, that the hellhole that so many of us can get in, right? Because somehow when you become an entrepreneur, unlike anything else, you're expected to do it all yourself, and it's impossible. I mean, how can that happen?
Yeah. And
so we get in this cycle of defeat. And so anyway, we've created a company called CJ LeBaron that is going to take all that off your shoulders, and also my abilities will be used in creating the courses and products that they create. So that's brand new and very exciting.
So no shortage of projects that you're working on, in other words.
No.
But,
and the other thing that's so dear to my heart, I can't believe I didn't mention it, is I had a dream in March. Wait, I'm seeing the time. You probably would like me to stop, so I won't.
No. Please. No. Keep going. I want to hear this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in March, I had a dream, which I often do, and it was such a joyful dream. I was on the brink of being born, and I was so excited and I even came with a list of things I was going to do during the lifetime. And so suddenly I'm born, and I see a clock ticking, which I knew was part of the game, that clock was going to end. But I wasn't bothered by it or saddened. Instead, scene after scene after scene of life, not scenes necessarily from my life, but just the human things, right? That the toes in the grass kind of thing. And then the clock stopped, and my turn at being human was over, and I said, wow, that was fabulous. Can I have another turn? And can I do that again? And the dream came with a title and a message for me. The title was Only While I'm Human. The message to me, and it can be a different message for anybody, but the message to me was, you who are thinkers and spiritually bent can spend a lot of time dwelling on the unseen. And yet, and that's a good thing, but you might want to consider paying more attention to the things you can do only while you're human.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took that to heart, and it isn't that I didn't relish the moments and the human things, but this has just taken it to another level for me. And so it has affected my everyday. I took up Tai Chi 3 days a week with a neighbor. She comes over and we do Tai Chi in the yard at 7. And I have added, I've added a lot of stuff to my life that I can only do while I'm human, and I think about that a lot. And so I'm creating some work around that theme, and am eager to invite children and adults both to create art and video and poetry that expresses what they love and can only do while they're human.
So great. So great. Where do you find the time to do all these different things is my question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm fooling myself and saying, you know what, you're sort of living out these ideas, but you're not really. I don't think that's the case. The pace seems to be okay, and
Yeah.
I have plenty of time to enjoy life, so it's all right.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so yeah, we are nearing that mark. So let me start to turn towards wrapping it up. Boy, I wish we had another hour. I could easily keep talking to you. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
But let me ask you one final question, if I may. And this is the question that I ask of all my guests. I'm an advocate for parents to raise rebels, and basically, rebels are people who live authentically with purpose to pursue their own passions in order to live an extraordinary life, as opposed to living someone else's idea of how you should live your life. What advice can you give to parents to raise their kids to become successful rebels in life?
Live it yourself.
In other words, be the example.
Yep. And if you're not good at it, let them know it. Say, you know what? I have trouble bucking what people expect of me. But here's why I don't want to be that anymore. First of all, Therefore, and because I want you, my darling child, to see how it's done. And I noticed, by the way, that you seem to have a better ability to do this than I do. So, I mean, if this is the case. And so I would like to look to you to help me. Maybe we could remind each other that we don't live by the expectations of others. We live by our heart, and we live by what we think is good and right and fascinating. And so let's do this together.
Fantastic. So succinct and on the money. And once again, it shows that, rather than have it be that one-way conversation, it becomes a two-way conversation and learning from each other, which I think is so important. So wonderful advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's advice I didn't do.
Right.
This is what I've learned.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if I get a second chance, that is what I'll do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh boy. Okay. Reluctantly, let me wrap up. Jan Black is an author, a creator, a builder, an entrepreneur, so many other things. She has so many titles. You know, before we actually hit record on this interview, Jan, we were talking, and I asked you, how you were doing, and your answer to me was, you have a beautiful life, and you told me all the reasons why it was a beautiful life. It's so great to see you living your life on your own terms, in service to others as well as yourself. Thank you for being such a wonderful example and an inspiration for all of us, you and your family. I really appreciate you taking the time today to chat with me and share your story. I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Paul, it's been an absolute delight and so helpful to me to be able to look back and think through these things. It's been a gift, and I am grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And reach out to me when you need, if I can help in any way. If you're starting to promote your book, if you're looking to work on, Only While I'm Human, anything, however I can help, please reach out. I'm more than willing to help you.
Let's do that for each other. That's great.
Okay, fantastic. Jan, thank you again. I'll talk to you very soon.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. RaisingRebellion.com is where you can find all of our podcast episodes, show notes, and sign up for our mailing list for all of the latest updates. If you're enjoying the podcast, it would be a huge compliment if you shared it with other Rebel parents that you think might enjoy it too. But most of all, I appreciate you listening, and I hope you're finding some helpful information for your family's journey. Thank you for being here, and until next time, go Rebs.